Firstly, I thank the candidates for keeping the time, and which is good, brings us to giving them the opportunity to answer your questions. Your questions have been selected, as Elizabeth said, from hundreds, or more than 100 questions that we received, and we trimmed them down to make sure that we got the important issues relating to us in this community. So the first question that is going to go is, what do you see as the needs and problems of this constituency, and how will you work with others to resolve them? Each candidate has 90 seconds. The amber light and the amber card will be shown at 75. So please be aware of the time. And the first one on this one is Faisal. Thank you.
We're a very unique place. I love that about us. We're not a typical London constituency. We're somewhere that you need to get to know, and you need to understand that we actually do have some really important needs. The Broadmead Road Bridge, it's been a real headache. There's no date on that. Whipps Cross Hospital, the hospital I was born in, which we've been for years hearing that I sat here in 2019 and heard that the money was there. It hasn't happened. These are really key infrastructure projects for our community. Chinkford Mount, the road I grew up off, the Greggs that I first worked in, that street has gone downhill. And when I talk to people around there, because believe me, I've spoken to thousands of people over the years, people really feel disheartened about the way our community is looking. So how are we going to get that done as an independent? If we win next week, we will become the most famous constituency in this country. And with that will come cachet and attention, and a community that has mobilized over just the last few weeks to support me. Hundreds and thousands of us that will stand up for our assets, and we will look beyond party lines. I will not answer to any political party, and it's so freeing. It's so freeing to just stand for you first, to stand for this community first, to say what I think, and to be able to form coalitions with people that can help us across party lines. That's a new politics. That's what we need. Because after all, nothing has got done, even when we had someone who was a member of the cabinet. Thanks.
Thank you for this question. I know that we're going to be coming on to Broadmead Road Bridge and Whipps Cross next. I know there's plenty to be said on those. Those are obviously crucial local issues, but plenty more to be said. I think when it comes to Chingford and Woodford Green, the key issues for this locality are, in many ways, I think, common to a lot of the rest of the country. What we're facing is a spiralling cost of living crisis, which is completely out of control and which is increasingly forcing people further and further out of London and further out of their means just in order to survive. The Liberal Democrats want to do more in order to help bring the cost of living crisis under control. We want to offer more support to mortgage owners when it comes to things like rates. We want to make sure that we're bringing down the cost of renting in this area. We want to do more to invest in housing through working with the local authorities in order to make sure that the funding is there to increase the amount of affordable housing stock in our area and regenerate our neighbourhoods. Meanwhile, we want to ensure that communities have much more control over the spread of second homes and letting mortgages in the area, and make sure that we're returning control of communities, returning control back to communities to make sure that they have some say over what their communities look like and how quickly they grow. It is important that when a place like this sees new housing developments, that the infrastructure grows in order to keep pace with it. We need to make sure that we're not overtaxing our roads and make sure that we are growing in a sustainable manner. Thanks very much.
Excuse me. Yes, one of the main issues that's affected me and a lot of people is the Broadmead Bridge. I mean, I cannot for the life of me understand why it's not been attended to, as it's quite an important thoroughfare to there. And the other issues in there that the local community do need attending to and sorting out. But I mean, what we would do also is to put more money in your pockets. I mean, to help the families, because we will raise the threshold for paying tax from 12,500 to 20,000 before you even start paying any tax. Look after our age pensions, again, more investment into the elderly. The net zero energy bills, I mean, that is ridiculously high. I mean, it seems that the energy companies seem proud to boast of all their profits they're making instead of cutting costs. That will need to sort of see into. But, and which will all help everybody locally as well. Thank you very much.
Two things that really matter here are obviously what happens nationally. We've been through the toughest 4 years that I can ever remember of being in politics. I don't think any government's been battered by the headwinds of things like COVID and also by the invasion, brutal invasion, by the way, of Ukraine, by Russia that brought in the whole cost of living crisis, and the government has tried to deal with that now. Maybe they made mistakes, but the intention is there, and that's what they tried to do. But we have now got the economy back in an even keel, with interest rates coming down, inflation coming down to target, and that means that we can afford to reduce the burden of taxation. I think we have to go further because businesses and individuals are feeling that squeeze. It is critical that we maintain that on a national level because people and their money are critical both nationally and locally, and we need to make sure they get the best value for all of that. And locally, it's really, really important, and I found this more and more over the years, that local councils really do start to listen to what local people say they want or don't want. One of the areas that the local Waltham Forest Council has been determined to do is to build here in the Chingford area of the constituency tall high-rise buildings, which nobody I know, no matter what their political ratings are, wants at all. We want low-rise family housing, both here and in Woodford. More of it, yes, we need more housing for younger people to be able to get on the ladder, but it has to be low-rise, not tower blocks. And we'll get to Broadmead Bridge later, but, and I just want to finish on this but, things like post office closures, police station closures are wrong, and they're done by politicians who don't care what the outcome is, but only care what happens to them personally.
Thank you. My understanding of local issues are familiar across London, across this city, across this country. They centre around health and crime and opportunity. And in particular, I know we're going to talk about Broadmead Bridge and Whips Cross later. But Labour's plan and my plan for here, and my priorities for here, will centre around how we support policing and young people and youth hubs, how we will support our high streets with better policing local teams, also how we reorganise business rates. And particularly housing. Everyone I've spoken to, housing is a crisis in some way, shape or form. Whether you're renting, whether you want to try and buy, whether your mortgages have gone up. But ultimately, politics can be different. The Labour Party are advocating, and I am absolutely a big believer in this because I've done this already over the last 10 years. The community need to decide and need to be empowered about how we support local issues, how we find solutions for local issues. So Labour's plan around devolution is about empowering local people. You decide where the housing goes, you decide what infrastructure we need, you decide about how we police, what areas that we need to police, what we want in our town centres, how do we create extra footfall, how do we support our older residents in the social care. It's about empowering people, and that's how you solve local issues. Me as an MP, or any of the candidates here that will be an MP, we are just an advocate for you. We facilitate that empowerment. And Labour are very, very keen to make sure that devolution comes to the hands of you, all your residents in our community, to make sure you have the power and you have the support to need to deliver what you think is right for your communities and our communities across the country.